What up and welcome to Something by Brian. I'm Brian and today I'm talking about Matt Reeves' The Batman, currently blowing audiences and critics away and earning all the dollary dues while doing so, being the fourth biggest opening since the pandemic hit and still haven't opened in all markets. If you haven't seen my latest video on Nolan's Batman trilogy, you're not fully aware of how much I adore the Caped Crusader and his enormous rogue gallery, but he's easily my favorite superhero, and with every new entry into his ever-growing filmography, I get super excited. And when they announced that Matt Reeves would be taking over after Affleck stepped down as director of his Batman movie, I was stoked. Not that Affleck isn't a great director, but I loved what Matt Reeves did when he stepped into the reborn Planet of the Apes franchise, and his two installments in that is nothing less than spectacular, so I was very intrigued to see what he could bring to the world of DC and Batman. So let's discuss what he could bring. In stark contrast to the weathered and older Batman with decades of experience fighting the corrupt and criminal underbelly of Gotham we'd just gotten accustomed to, this movie takes us back to a Batman in his infancy. A young, angry, according to many on this here interwebs, emo Bruce Wayne. Cleverly doesn't go too much into the whole, oh no, his parents were killed in another way, pearls spilling everywhere stuff, but the overall story still manages to tie into a lot of the confusion and frustration regarding his parents' demise and the guilt and wrath he still feels. Without spoiling the story, here's a quick recap. A sadistic serial killer is beginning to target the higher-ups of the political scene of Gotham, and with every target a clue is left behind by the killer. Batman is brought in by Gordon to help figure this case out. An uneasy alliance is forged as new acquaintances are being assessed by the Batman, and he needs to uncover who he really is as well as try to solve the Riddler's schemes and crimes as they slowly unfold. This story is a true detective story, which is amazing. Batman is often nicknamed the greatest detective, but it isn't that often that aspect of his character gets to shine on the big screen adaptations. But with clear inspiration from classic detective films such as David Fincher's Zodiac and Seven, this Batman becomes a true noir filled with rain, dead ends, and mystery. It's a long movie. Only a couple of minutes shy of 3 hours, it's actually the third longest comic book movie as of recording this, only surpassed by Endgame and Zack Snyder's Justice League. But I definitely think that works in this movie's favor. Could you maybe trim it by 10 minutes time? Sure. There's some somewhat unnecessary sequel bait towards the end that could be removed, but overall I don't think the runtime of this is excessive, and I think it needs to be long to establish the Riddler as a proper threat. If it had only been 2 hours long, it would feel as if he wasn't this presence that lingered over the terrified city. Speaking of him, let's talk a bit about the characters and performances, and let's start with Paul Dano's Riddler. What an inspired take on the character. The Riddler is one of my favorite Batman villains, and to depict him as this demented incel-like serial killer is just wonderfully wicked, and Paul Dano is the perfect cast. His ageless, soft face make him look so unsuspectful and innocent, but his performance is so unnerving. He can make the most unsettling smile, and I get shivers just thinking about it. I'm a fan of the green suit from the comics, and this movie has some really accurate costume adaptations. This one is not one of them. However, I really think it works. It's a believable costume for the character to wear, and it is unsettling because it so closely resembles the real-life Zodiac killer. So if you have that knowledge in your visual library, you're scared from the first second you see this guy. Robert Pattinson is great as this angry, violent, and vengeful young Bruce Wayne that sees only the worst in everyone. It's an interesting journey for his character throughout the film, and the interplay with Gordon is some of the best we've seen. I still think Gary Oldman is my favorite Gordon, but the dynamic between the two characters in this movie is just so entertaining, and their camaraderie has never been depicted better. Zoe Kravitz's Selina Kyle is straight out of the comics. The look, the attitude, the stray cats. I love this Catwoman and hope we get more of her, preferably a whole spin-off movie based on the comic When in Rome. And such a great dynamic between her and Robat Battinbat, and their interactions, both positive and negative, just kept making their relationship more interesting. Colin Farrell's Penguin is the most impressive prosthetic work I've ever seen. He is totally unrecognizable, and it is actually kinda weird that they cast a tall, handsome Irishman to portray this short, disfigured, spiteful American with the heaviest New York accent ever, but I'm glad they did, because he steals every scene he's in. Such an entertaining performance, and I'm looking very much forward to the spin-off show about his rise to power. Andy Serkis's Alfred is one I'd like to see more of. He seemed very capable, both as an emotional anchor but also as an ally to Batman, helping with solving the riddles and such. Also, John Turturro is in this, and I absolutely love him, but I'm used to seeing him in comedic roles and comedies in general, so I needed a minute to adjust, but he was actually very intimidating as the crime boss Falcone. Very impressed with his range and just a great casting decision from the director or caster or whoever called up John Turturro. In general, Matt Reeves just made a bunch of great decisions with this film. I've already praised him for taking inspiration from David Finch's detective films, but even more importantly, he just looked to some really good Batman comics for ideas as well. The influences from stories such as The Long Halloween and Ego are apparent and very much appreciated. The red color grading is a wonderful departure for the depiction of Gotham, and this Gotham is the best we've seen since the Tim Burton days 40 years ago. It's just so greasy and wet and dark and nasty. The idea to shoot most of this in Scotland is great. Not that Scotland is greasy, nasty and wet. Well, the last part is kinda true. But it is, however, filled with gothic architecture that just looks perfectly Gothamy. Also, the action in this, however scarce it might be, is great. The hand-to-hand combat stuff is impressively choreographed and so visceral. Oh, and the car chase might be the best car chase I've ever seen. This Batmobile, it's my favorite yet. I thought the Tumblr of the Nolanverse couldn't be bested and was a great adaptation, but this one, it's a horror monster. I love it. Oh, and the score in general was magnificent, but in particular, the car chase soundscape and score was so entertaining. I was on the edge of my seat from start to finish in that chase. I think I've started rambling now, but it's just because I'm trying to keep this spoiler free. In conclusion, I've nothing but praise for this movie, and those involved in its inception and execution. I hope this universe will continue and be expanded upon in multiple movies and spin-off series if the level of quality will continue to be this high at least. Also, something I've not yet mentioned, but I've heard some people critique this movie for not being funny enough, and not that all superhero films need to be Marvel levels of quippy, but there's definitely humor in this. The Penguin is hilarious, and Batman also had some lines that made me smile, so to say this film is humorless would be incorrect, in my humble opinion. I always struggle to say that one movie is better than another because mostly, even though they might use the same main character, they want to tell different stories and use different tools to do so, and if it's a story that's conveyed nicely, who am I to say that it's a bad movie or some movie is better? So I can't say that this is the best Batman movie ever, but it's definitely good enough that I would understand anyone arguing that it is. Thanks for watching this. Next video will be a draw view for something Oscar related, I think. I'm not entirely sure yet. Anyways, and as always, if you like the drawing, consider liking the video, and if you like the video, consider subscribing. Until next time, take care.